For today's review, we have another point-and-click adventure game. This one is called The Book of Unwritten Tales, developed by King Art and published by Nordic Games. Honestly, this game's a bit of a mess to me. When I first started it up, the first thing I noticed was this. These black bars. It is set to the right resolution. You can even move the mouse cursor over them. They're deliberately there. I'm not sure why. They don't seem to serve any purpose, except maybe to cover up some cutoff. Even the game can't seem to make up its mind on the aspect ratio. Most of the game, and most of the cutscenes, are in this odd aspect ratio. But the main menu is full screen, and the title scroll video bit gets double blackbarred rather than full screen, which would have made sense given the aspect ratio. I don't know if they were designing this for iPad or something. It just strikes me as weird. I wouldn't mind too much if this was the only oddity, but the game is kind of plagued with visual glitches and mistakes. Like this nonsense with the main title screen. Notice the black bar over there. There's random animation missed timings like here, and just visual screw-ups like the dragon's whiskers in this background. That's just lazy, honestly. It takes 5 minutes to airbrush those out, I know. Speaking of the dragon, she seems to change sizes scene to scene, which just bugged me a little bit. It's like, how is this, and this all the same dragon? The main thing is these errors, they just really stood out to me because the backgrounds themselves are really well done. And I really like the character design and the modeling work, but
Obviously, the skull-headed
I wish they had put a little bit more polish into it. So the visuals are a mixed bag, so how about the puzzles?
Hey, Gulliver.
Probably the weakest point of Unwritten Tales. I had to resort to a walkthrough on the second screen of the game. I'm not kidding, and it's not because it was a hard puzzle, it was because the game suffers from a severe case of pixel hunting, which is the biggest mistake you can make when making a point-and-click game. Basically, all of the puzzles are really simple, easy to figure out. The hard part is finding the things you actually need to finish the puzzles. And that's not fun, just wandering around screen to screen like, what did I miss? Where's the cup or something that I magically need to fill with water? It's just annoying when they do that. It's just an artificial way of lengthening the game. Take this scene, for example. The second interactive one in the game. You need a sword, and the swords are right there, except you can't just go and pick them up. I found the pole really quickly, and thought, hey, I'll use the pole to yank a sword out of. That's partially the solution, but it wouldn't let me use the pole. It kept saying that you'd be spotted. Now, let's look at the screen. There's another essential item on here. Anybody have any idea where to click? No? That's why I had to look up a walkthrough. You need fishing line from the box that is half hidden by the character's butt. Here's another example. This bar has several uninteresting background and foreground objects that are actually essential items that you need, particularly on the bar. There's like 4 of them, well, maybe 3. But you have to find these things or you can't progress the game. I discovered halfway through the 3rd act that if you hold the spacebar down, it does actually show you all the interactable hotspots on the screen. That would have really helped if I'd known about that sooner, but the game never told me about it, and I don't necessarily go around pushing random buttons on a keyboard in a point-and-click game where you primarily use the mouse. Pixel hunting is bad enough, honestly, but they don't stop there. They have a lot of additional artificial difficulty in the form of you can't pick a lot of things up until you know you need them, or you've had a specific conversation, and you can't have certain conversations without first looking at items that you need to then pick up later. It's really annoying. You basically end up going from person to person to item, click on everything on the screen, talk to them again, and hopefully you'll get an item that you need, but you may not. And you may have to go talk to another person after talking to this person. And that's not fun. That's not challenging. That's just a lot of pointless wandering around. And there's really no way to accelerate your walking speed in the game, which, yeah. So, the game's puzzles are kind of bad. Is the story any good? Well, I guess it's okay overall. The ending's terrible. It's a non-ending. It doesn't resolve anything. Pretty much nothing is actually resolved except for the immediate concerns of the characters. But they're acting like they saved the world at the end, and it's just kind of like, what? You didn't. Anyway, several plot points and several of the bridging moments are also really disjointed feeling. Especially since they tend to off-screen portions, because I don't know if they were out of budget or out of time, or they just didn't want to have to animate them. But I hate when they do that kind of thing. It's like this really important scene that should have been mentioned at some point somewhere is just mentioned in a dialogue like, oh yeah, and that happened. What? That's just bad. So the game doesn't really drive itself forward on the plot necessarily. It's fairly predictable anyway, so it doesn't matter. But it tries to drive itself forward on its humor, and it comes across as trying too hard because of it. When it's doing its own thing, it can be good, even great. Some of the gags, like the bit with death, I enjoyed. But every time I wanted to give the game credit, it decides to break the fourth wall with some kind of an Indiana Jones or WoW reference. These aren't even current references, which was really confusing. They comment on pretty much every cliche that they use when they use them, because apparently commenting on cliches isn't cliche yet or something, I don't know. And when they do have a joke that's actually funny, they tend to run it into the ground. It's like with the Mortimer mummy bit, which if you've seen the trailer is probably the portion that you saw. That part seems good, and it would be if it was shorter. But you have to talk to this guy repeatedly, and all of his conversations are like this. It gets old. It gets really old. I don't know what they were thinking, honestly. There's also the fact that a lot of the jokes, even the better ones, are actually stolen from other games. It makes it really hard to tell when the game is being original and funny, or if I just am not aware of where they lifted the gag from. That's not to say that you can't do jokes like that. They can, and usually are, be funny if they're not too heavy-handed or overly frequent with the references. But the writers seemed the need to point them out when they happened, and they overuse them immensely. They're like, hey, that was a whip, like Indiana Jones, nudge nudge. See, there's the theme song. That's funny, right? Oh, hey, a boulder bit like in Indiana Jones, but tiny, see, it's funny. Well, it would have been if it wasn't the 15th Indiana Jones joke in an hour. It's ridiculous how much they overuse these. That seems to be the main problem, really. They don't know when to stop. The Mortimer bit drags on, the real-life MMO bit drags on, the WoW Paladin references in Chapter 4 are just plain annoying, the amount of them. They even included bubble hearthing and buff durations, and those haven't been a problem in WoW for years. They have an interesting world, and when the writing works, it works, so I just wish that they had let it exist and didn't feel the need to force jokes and references to movies and games in every 5 minutes just for the sake of them having jokes every 5 minutes. The whole thing just comes across as meh. It's fairly obvious they were trying, but it just didn't work for me. At $20, if you like point and clicks, you might get some fun out of it. Maybe if you haven't played any point and clicks, you might get some fun out of it because you won't know all the references. But I would not recommend it otherwise. That said, if they did a sequel, I would take a look at it, because there's enough good bits here that if they polish up the rough parts, it might be a good game. But they really, this one really, just so across the board. It just, yeah. That wraps up this review. Until next time, look out.
Right.